Hi, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connection. Each of us have stories that help us understand each other and help to bring our community closer together. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who have had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who have had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories. Community Connections is about these people and about their stories. I'm sure you'll enjoy meeting these amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Please enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and I am so pleased to welcome today's guest, Jim Hughson. He is the personable, award-winning announcer of Hockey Night in Canada, an avid runner, a South Surrey resident, and a great supporter of youth sport in our community. Welcome, Jim.
My pleasure to be with you, Gordy.
Thank you so much. Can you tell us a little bit about growing up in Dawson Creek and Fort St. John and what your journey has been getting to the point you're at today?
Well, it's been a bit of a long one, but to summarize, I was born in the north. I was born in Dawson Creek, but I never really lived there. In the 50s, when they pushed a railway bridge across the Peace River so that the railway could go to Fort St. John, my father was a grain buyer for the Alberta Wheat Pool. So we moved to Fort St. John, and that's where I spent my youth and grew up and graduated. But as much as I love the North, and I wouldn't trade my youth in the North for anything, I can tell you that it didn't offer much for me after I graduated. So basically, my car was running at the graduation ceremony, and I left town. Many of my friends stayed there and have had a wonderful life in the North. I thought there were bigger and better things and opportunities elsewhere. So I left there, and then it's been a sort of a circuitous, nomadic life since then. I bounced around in the radio. I tried university actually, Gordy, but I found it didn't pay very well, and so I went back to work, and I worked in the radio industry, moving from town to town, from Penticton to Kelowna to Brandon, Manitoba, basically trying to learn my trade and earn an extra $50 a month wherever I moved. And I found my way to Vancouver and the great CKNW radio station, working for Al Davidson. And that is where I really felt like I decided that I really wanted to be in the radio and television industry and the hockey industry and be a play-by-play hockey guy, and was fortunate enough to get some breaks along the way to be able to make a living at it. And so it's kind of hobby turned profession, and it's been a very good life for my family and I.
And how did you end up coming to South Surrey and finding this as your home and a place to raise your family?
Well, as a British Columbian, I knew the area, and when I lived in Vancouver, when I worked at CKNW, I lived in New Westminster. I lived on Capitol Hill in Burnaby. I moved around and shared houses and lived in apartment buildings and that sort of thing. But I had visited friends all the time, and South Surrey, White Rock, as we called it at the time, was a million miles away in the 70s, and like, who's going to live out there? And it seemed like a road trip all the time, but it was beautiful. But in the 90s, when I was given an opportunity to move back, and at this point wasn't a single guy looking for an apartment, I had I left with everything that I owned would fit in the trunk of a car. When I came back in the 90s, after spending about 15 years in the East working in my profession, I came back with an 18-wheeler, a child, another one on the way, and I needed a place for family to live. And it occurred to me from my past that I just thought, you know what, White Rock, South Surrey would be a wonderful place to have a family, to live a family life. You're by the ocean. And so that's why we chose it. And I had to choose it because my wife, Denise, is from the East, so she never lived in the West at all. So it was kind of up to me to find a place for us, and I'm so glad I did. We've had such a wonderful time on the Semiahmoo Peninsula. Our children grew up and graduated from Elgin. went off to university from there. They still have friends in the area, and we have so many connections in that area that it is our home and probably always will be.
Well, that journey you talk about, certainly part of your time you were involved with announcing baseball as well, and with the Blue Jays, and the Expos were always my favorite, and I still hate Rick Mundy for hitting that home run that changed their chance to make it to the World Series. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences as well?
Well, I started with the Expos. That's where I got the first opportunity to broadcast baseball games. It was difficult because I was working at TSN at the time. I was a hockey announcer, but the opportunity was there to broadcast Expo games. So I auditioned for it. I'd never broadcast baseball games. I spent a long time broadcasting fastball, actually, in the old in Kelowna, in the heyday of the fastball in British Columbia. I broadcast games in the Kelowna Senior Men's League between the Sun Country Suns and the Rutland Rovers and teams like that. I loved it. But I also loved baseball, and I knew the game. But I had to convince people that just because I'd never broadcast the game before didn't mean that I'd never seen a game before. So I had to go through the audition process and did some, broadcast some games, simulated games, watching games that were taped, and won the opportunity to broadcast the Expos, and it was fantastic. They were a really good team at that time. Buck Rogers was the manager. He was such a wonderful person. He took me under his wing. He answered some really inane questions that I probably asked at the time. And I was a 20-year-old kid broadcasting Major League Baseball games, and they had such a neat team. Tim Wallach was on the team. Rock Raines was there at the time. Larry Walker was a call-up at that time. And people like Bryn Smith, who was a pitcher, and Tim Burke, they were guys that I could go to and ask a million questions. And my partner was Kenny Singleton, who opened so many doors for me. He would take me into the manager's offices of all the other teams, and he could walk anywhere. He could go anywhere, and everybody knew him. But he'd take me along and introduce me, and so I got to know people in baseball. So that was the start of it. And a couple of years later, I was asked to move from the National League to the American League and broadcast the Blue Jay games. And my timing was perfect. Like Gordy, there are times in the year where many baseball teams are finished in July. They're out of the race. And so the dog days are really the dog days, because in some of those cases that you're broadcasting games for a team that is so far out of the race that the games are meaningless. I had a few years in a row of never broadcasting a meaningless baseball game. The Blue Jays were that good that every game meant something. They were in the race all the time. They won 2 world championships. My regret is that as local broadcasters, we didn't get to broadcast the playoffs in the World Series. But I was there and every day for those championship teams of 92 and 93. And it was terrific. There were no dog days. They were such good teams. But at the end of that, in 1994, when there was a work stoppage in Major League Baseball, it coincided with an opportunity to move back to Vancouver and concentrate on one sport. And I had decided that hockey would be my choice. I was kind of being pushed in the East towards staying with baseball as opposed to hockey, but it was my passion and my love, partly selfishly, because baseball is a wonderful game, but they insist on playing every day all summer. Whereas hockey, I can have the summer off. And as a Canadian, I appreciate the good weather that we do get. And I also thought about with children being able to be off in the summer when my kids are off. So there's some very practical things that went into the decision. And so I moved back to Vancouver and pursued. It was a time where the crossover between hockey and baseball was such that it got so busy, and there were so many crossover dates that it was clear to me that I had to choose one over the other. And I had the opportunity to come back to Vancouver and work in the hockey market, move my family back to the West where I had always wanted to be. And so I chose in 1994 to move back to Vancouver and say goodbye to baseball.
And you, in your hockey term, you got to do the Olympics in Sochi, and that must have been quite an experience.
Yeah, it was terrific. I always say that for me, the best hockey team that I have ever watched play the game was Team Canada at the 2014 Sochi Olympics. They were so machine-like. They were precision-like. They weren't they weren't as exciting as some teams that I've watched because they were so darn good. They were buttoned down defensively. They just had I've just never seen anything like it. And I knew going into the final game against Sweden, I knew they were going to win. I didn't think they were going to run over them, but I knew they'd find a way to win that game. It's just the finest hockey team that I've ever watched, and it was a terrific experience because it was the odd Olympics, right? Because in Russia they had built this entire village in Sochi, and then because of some terrorist activity, a lot of people didn't want to come there. So there were very few fans at the games. It wasn't huge crowds in the plaza, but it was a wonderful experience. And when I left, we had all of this red clothing that the CBC had given us to wear on the air. And it was all bright red clothing, much of which I probably wasn't going to wear again. So I hung it in the closet of this apartment building that I was stationed in Sochi, and I suspect it might still be there now because I'm not sure that anybody was ever going to move into those places. They built this place specifically for the Olympics, and I'm not sure it's been inhabited since.
And you got to be announcer in a couple of films. What was that? One?
Oh, yeah.
Air Bud, was that one of them? And Most Valuable Primate, was that the other one? MVP?
For a while, I had the market cornered on the announcer job in animal sports movies. It was so Most Valuable Primate was a primate who played hockey, a monkey who played hockey. And so I was offered this job, and I thought, this would be a really interesting experience. I was working with Dave Thomas, and I got my own dressing room. I had actual lines in the movie. I actually appeared in the movie, and I was an announcer. So I did MVP, and I thought that was fun because it was just a really neat experience to be on a set, a movie set. I hadn't done any of that sort of thing, even though the role that I had was pretty much what I do on a regular basis. So then it was a great success. Like I'm surprised I wasn't up for awards actually, but so MVP played to rave reviews, so much so that they decided to do MVP 2. And I was in Philadelphia. I remember the call actually when the producer, who was based in Vancouver, which is part of the reason that I was involved in this whole project, phoned and said, you know what, we're doing MVP 2 and we'd like you to reprise your position as the announcer from MVP and do it again for MVP 2. And I said, well, when do you want to do it? And he said, well, it's this Friday. I said, I'm on a road trip with the Vancouver Canucks and I won't be back. Can we do it on another date? And he just said, matter-of-factly, no. So that was it. I was out on MVP 2, but I did get another call from him to do Air Bud, which was a dog playing baseball. And to this day, I look forward to my residual checks that are about $49.10 a year. And I keep them all. I don't cash them. I just keep them all in an envelope as a reminder, especially to my children, that I was a movie star at one point.
And weren't you the voice for EA Sports as well?
Yeah, that was a fantastically interesting project. The most tedious work I've ever done in my life. When I started with them, the intelligence that was involved in the computers at the time only allowed them to do a couple of lines of audio. So my first job with was I think in EA Sports NHL Hockey 1994. And what I would say was, good afternoon and welcome to Chicago Stadium for today's game between the Detroit Red Wings and the Chicago Blackhawks. And that was it, because that's all the room they had. So within a couple of years of that, the whole world expanded in IT and computers, and they came to me and said, let's we can put play-by-play into a video game. And how should we do it? So I worked with a number of different producers, and the cool part of this was that we actually created the tech. The technology was now there, but we created the program. We had no idea how to do it. And we started to learn how to stitch together tiny little phrases so that they became a sentence. And the computer would pick those little lines and sew them together, stitch them together automatically, and they would become a sentence. And in the first couple of years, it sounded like they were stitched. But as we went along, we found out how to have, an intonation in my voice that would lead to another phrase to connect to it. So it actually it sounded like a sentence. But at one point, we recorded 30,000 different phrases that went into that game. And that was the tedium of the work. I was in a basement sound booth in Burnaby at the EA campus, and I would record for as long as I could until my head would explode after 4 or 5 hours, or my voice would be gone. And I just have to say, that's it for today. But you can imagine there are 750 players in the NHL, and then we expanded to all of the international players so that you could play the international game. And you would have to record each one of those names, but with a different intonation, because you don't say Wayne Gretzky's name in the first period the way you do in the third period when he's about to score a goal. So every recording had to be done several different times. And as satisfying as it was to do the work, it was, oh my goodness, it was mentally fatiguing and incredibly tedious. So I look back on it as a wonderful project, but I was kind of glad when we moved away from it. But I did find that during that time, so many people were playing the game that I had all sorts of parents and friends of mine who had children coming to me and saying, "Get out of my living room. I'm sick and tired of you."
And you're on the road so much that I think you do a lot of running. And I remember being down at Badwater with when you were pacing Ferg Hawk and some of the runs he did down there, and delightful time. Do you find that's your best exercise when you're on the road so much and you find a chance to get out and run?
Never would have done it as a young man. I love to play. I've always loved playing sports. I've always been very competitive, and loved hockey and loved racket sports and things like that. But I found as I got very busy in the industry that I work in, that I was alone all the time, that you couldn't get a game up with somebody, and you couldn't carry the equipment around. So I began running, and it wasn't a labor of love. It was to get some exercise. It was something I could do by myself on the road. And like most people who run, it becomes kind of addictive, and it's just something that you just love to do. And it's a kind of a mindless thing. I never ever run with music on or anything like that. I'm just alone with my own thoughts. And as it developed, I've said over the years that I run the NHL. And that doesn't mean I'm after Gary Bettman's job. It means that I have a running route in every National Hockey League city. Some of them I love, some are better than others, but I've got a place that I can go and get a workout. And so that became my routine. And I still, you'll still find me running through Crescent Park occasionally, or up the Crescent Road Hill. I see the same people that wave at me all the time, and have all sorts of different running routes around the peninsula. But it's just a wonderful way to sort of maintain some level of fitness when you're spending all of your time in a hotel and an airport.
And through the course of your profession, you've won a number of Gemini Awards. You won the Foster Hewitt Memorial Award. Can you talk a little bit about how that felt and what that meant to you?
I think Gordy, for me, it's I don't do me very well. I don't think but it was so rewarding. The Foster Hewitt Award and having a plaque in the National Hockey League's Hall, or the Hockey Hall of Fame, meant so much to me because I saw what it meant to my family. And that's pretty cool that one day my granddaughter Millie can go for a walk through the Great Hall and see Grandpa and a plaque. So that means more to me than anything. And the other thing is to be To be honored by your peers, there's no better honor than to have the people that you work with and you know that understand your industry and you know that understand your job to recognize your ability. And it's very humbling, very rewarding. And, you know, it's some of it is just a longevity, but it's, I guess it's nice to be recognized. And I think that it's one of the things that you sit back and I will take it with me when I retire and think, yeah, I accomplished something. But for me, in the accomplishment in my profession is not unlike a player in the National Hockey League. When you do what I do, my feeling is that you always want to be the guy who works on the last day of the season. Just like every player wants to play in the last game of the season that's played. As a broadcaster, you want to be there and you want to be the person who gets to broadcast the last game of the season. And that is the greatest reward I've had.
And you've talked, you're obviously a very personable and engaging person. You talked once telling me a little bit about the junior hockey team you played on that didn't win many games, but there's something pretty special about that team just the same. Can you talk about sort of those social connections and how important they evolve out of sport?
Oh, I've always loved team games. I've always loved being part of a team. To this day, I still play Wednesday nights at South Surrey Arena when we're allowed to play hockey, because I love the engagement. I love the fact that you get together with a diverse number of people from your community, whether they're doctors and lawyers and contractors, and everybody's got a different job. We get together and everybody's got a nickname and you can tease everybody and have a blast and play some hockey. And you spend a couple of hours, or spend an hour playing hockey and a couple of hours sitting in the dressing room talking about everything and absolutely nothing. And it's the best conversations you can ever have. So I've always loved that about team. Whether I played on teams or whether I coached teams, I've always felt and understood the need, my need anyway, to be in that setting, to gather and be part of a team and be part of that. So I played hockey all my years as a kid, and actually we were in Fort St. John. We had pretty good hockey teams, but by about midget hockey, they took our best players. Like, we were a very small town. Fort St. John at the time was about 6,000 people. So we had 2 or 3 like really good players that we played together all the way up through minor hockey. And by the time we got ready to play junior hockey in our hometown, the 2 or 3 best players went off to play in other places to seek their fame and fortune and try and climb up in the game. So that left us with pretty much a skeleton crew. And so the Fort St. John Golden Hawks, in the years that I played for them, we didn't have many players left. And our third string goaltender often played left wing because we didn't have enough players in our lineup. And one year we had a 24-game season in the junior league that we played in the North. And our season finished at 0-22-1. And that was the best damn tie in the history of hockey. It was outstanding. And I remember scoring a goal in a 3-3 tie in that game. But it was only 23 games. They didn't make us play the 24th game because we hadn't won a game that season and we weren't going to impact the standings. So they let us pass. But what I would say about that team is we had the best parties you could ever have. We were the tightest group, even though we were lovable losers, and we just weren't good enough to win any games against the other teams, but we were the tightest group, and it's one of the best teams I've ever played on. And I still have friends, lifelong friends from that year, even though it's a very forgettable season in the standings, but team means everything. And I carry that forward in my life to this day. The people that I work with, the technicians, the people that I work around, they're part of my team now. And you win and lose together, and it's a wonderful thing to have people to lean on all the time.
There is. Is the nickname they call you in the dressing room still Hughie?
Oh yeah, yeah. And like that's one of the great things about team too, as you know, Gord. Everybody has a nickname. I go to Wednesday night hockey. I've played with guys for 15 years and I don't know what their name is. I'm afraid of walking into Safeway with my wife, Denise, and running into Loud Laugh and having to say, Loud Laugh, this is Denise. Denise, this is Loud Laugh, because I don't know his name.
Yeah.
I do in some of the cases, but there are a couple of guys who I've only known them ever by their nickname on Wednesday night.
Yeah, that's a great thing about sport. Now you've emceed our kids sport fundraiser in this community, and I know that's a real passion of yours, ensuring that people get the opportunity to have those kind of experiences that you had growing up, and helping to sponsor. Can you talk a little bit about what kids sport means to you and the impact you think it has with the many people that you've interviewed who've received funding and support through it?
Well, to the point I was just talking about. So my life, I've been so lucky to be able to engage in team sports and to have my children grow up and engage in team sports. And I understand the impact that it has. So I owe a great debt to you for organizing the South Surrey White Rock chapter of Kids Sport, and to Ronnie Patterson for inviting me to be a part of it. And it's become a real passion, because you know what I love about Kids Sport is that there's no overhead, that it's a charitable endeavor, that you know that all of the money that people are donating and giving to that particular chapter is going to the kids who really need it. And so if we can offer a kid, a young boy or girl, a chance to play on a team that they otherwise wouldn't get, that's so fantastic. And to see the thousands of the numbers that are incredible. We think, we think of our community as a very affluent community, and I think it is, but you lose sight of the fact that your neighbors might not be as affluent as you think. And there are all sorts of disenfranchised children. There are people who can't go and play soccer or hockey or baseball because their families just can't afford it. So it is absolutely wonderful how the community of White Rock and South Surrey has come together to make this chapter of Kids Sport fantastic and one of the best that you could possibly have. And we, you know what it's like. We have one big fun dinner every year, and it allows people to contribute, and it allows us to make the chapter successful. So it's a real passion, not only to try and make the evening fun, because I think it's really important that people want to come back and think it's a think it's a neat event and they want to be there, but to know that it's such a collaborative work amongst a whole bunch of people to help in the community. So it's a no-brainer for me, and it's one that I really concentrate on, because I just think it does so much good.
And I think that we watch the news, weather, and sport, as they say on the news, and you've brought culture into that too. So the way you've added some culture to the kids' sport and using the vehicle of sport to broaden those horizons. And I think that's been an instrumental part of the growth and understanding of kids' sport in our community as well.
Yeah, I think, you know what, I just think that kids are such a wonderful resource. They are us. They are going to be us. So our kids sport function, as you know, is not only about kids and helping kids, but it includes kids. And I've just felt that it's one of the few events that I go to every year that I so look forward to, because we'll have a room full of kids, whether they're participating in drama, we have actors involved, whether they're musicians, whether they're kids who play on a team. It's just like, team means more than just sport. Team can be being in the drama club. Team can be doing so many things collaboratively with other people. And I just think that kids sport allows us, and our function allows us, to bring all of these kids together and allow them to participate and do things as a collaborative and together. And there's nothing bad comes of that. It's just there's so much good involved in that, and it's very, very rewarding. And then to meet some of the kids that have been involved in our kids sport function years later, and they always remember it. That was my first time I get a chance to do Who's on First in front of 250 or 300 people. it's just wonderful to see the impact that it can have on children.
Yeah, it's a broad. And I think I read somewhere that when you went to UVic for your sojourn there, that you were looking at studying drama and theater.
I
And
was. I had the good fortune of working with an English teacher named Jim Hoffman, who was just a fabulous man, fabulous teacher in Fort St. John. Not only was he our English teacher, but he formed a drama club, and he from for about 5 or 6 years through um, uh, after elementary school and into junior high and senior high school. I was very involved in the drama club because of Jim Hoffman, and he encouraged us to be involved in it. We did these great plays, and our plays were always very well received, and we always got a chance to go to the provincial drama finals and things like that. They used to have these adjudicated festivals, and we would always take our plays to them, because we did everything from we did Slawomir Mrozek, we did Hamlet one year. So I loved it. I loved the performing arts. I was probably the only guy in the town, or one of the few guys in my town, who was not only prominent on the hockey team but also in the theater company. So when I got to grades 11 and 12, Jim was he was really good to me, and he created a couple of classes, electives. So I did writing and directing 11 and 12, and I also had a theater 12 course where I was the only participant. I was the only guy in the class, but it allowed me to work on some projects, and he kept me busy with them. One of the projects was we did some radio plays. So we would go to the local radio station on a Sunday afternoon, and they would make time for us, and we'd record a half-hour radio play. And that's where I got a job at the radio station, because they heard the manager, who I knew, because everybody knows everybody in a small town, but Gene Daniels was the manager of the radio station, and he heard me working on one of these plays, and he said, "You want to read news on the weekends and do weather and stuff like that? It's a part-time job." I said, "Sure." So that's how I got into the radio business. So when I graduated from high school, I had some bursaries and scholarships, and went off to UVic and was in the theater department. And it was my thought that I was going to be a thespian, that I was going to be an actor, that would be my living. Then I got to UVic, and I realized that I wasn't the only one in the class anymore. There were other people who were really good at it, and this was going to be really difficult. And I got some parts and things like that, but I also had been teased in the radio business and thought, I kind of like that life, but much to the chagrin of my parents. I quit university and went back up to Fort St. John to work at the radio station on a full-time basis for $400 a month.
All right.
And it was darn good money. And just to show her chagrin, when I stopped at my parents' home as I was making the drive back up north, my parents were living in Parksville at the time. I went into the house, and my mother had taken my graduation picture and turned it to face the wall.
Oh, dear.
And that was her way of saying, "I don't approve of this." I think the way things have turned out, she might approve of it, but she wanted me to be an educated, university degree kind of person. And I failed her in that regard, but I think I made up for it in a couple of other areas.
And certainly there's a lot of drama and theater and sport, as you're well aware. And so maybe there's some metaphors between the two of them that you've
you're absolutely right, Gordy. It's still it's not always an act, but you're still a performer. Yeah. It's still the stage. So I just found I combined the two things. I was on the local hockey team and in the drama club, and I combined the two, and this is where it got me.
Yeah. Well, it's been a delight to have you on Community Connections. You've made such remarkable contributions, not just to our community, but to our province, the country, and internationally. And we're so proud of you, and so pleased that you've chosen to be a member of this community. So if you have any parting comments or notes of wisdom that you'd like to convey to our listeners, we'd love to hear those. And again, thank you so much, and wishing you well in your apartment in Toronto for the next, however long it may be, 2 to 3 months out there. So,
I dearly miss my morning run on Crescent Beach and walk with my dog around the dike. Yeah, we live in such a nice community, and I've been able to build so many friendships, so many relationships within our community. It's been a fabulous place to live. It was a great place for my kids, Jen and Matt, to grow up. So we've loved it, and love all our friends there. And I really appreciate that we have a sense of community and that we can do some things together, that we get together at the Legion for a beer and have some fun. And I have all sorts of friends out there that it's a very different level. I can leave my work and know that my home is a very different place with all of the friends that I have there. So yeah, I would say finally to everyone, enjoy our community, because it's a beauty and there are so many good things that happen in it. And may there always be blue lines on your ice.
thank you so much. You've been a great ambassador for our community, for the sport, and for our country. Thank you, Jim Hughson. Thank you, Hughie. May we talk in the dressing room again. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.